Men, this is gonna be a
Men,
this is gonna be a very manly conversation.
very manly,
Very
because manly as defined is the exact same thing for every dude in the world, and it should be a quick podcast, right? We're just
quick
about
podcast.
being manly. But one of the goals here today, so we have three Naval Academy grads and then one outsider who went to some other
One
academy. It doesn't really
outsider.
even bear mentioning, not
Yeah.
worth our time to even discuss it. But
Yeah, this whole Zoom call smells like goat. I'm just throwing that out there.
That's because it's manly.
because
Greatest
it's
of all
manly, because
times.
men
Go.
smell like goats too. Like you have to smell a certain way to be a man. And I will tell you this though, it's funny. I was at football practice. I'm the head coach, and we're doing voluntary practice. I was wearing flip flops because that's kind of my normal attire. They're leather, they're rainbow, so they're my dress flippies. But one of the kids was like, "Dude, you get manicures every week," and I was like, just a random player. I was like, "What are you talking? These are sixth grade boys. Like, what are you talking about, dude?" He's like, "Nobody's toes look that nice." And I'm like, "This is the weirdest conversation." I was like, I'm not opposed to manicures, but I found it interesting because even in that simple conversation, there was an opportunity to talk about manhood, right? And the idea of self-care. So I started talking about self-care. And I was like, "Hey, you guys, some of you guys, my son included, if you take off your cleats, your toenails look like fingernails. It's disgusting. You should care more about being clean and hygienic. Stop chewing your nails, especially your toenails. You disgusting human beings." And I went into like what, manhood is not about. It maybe you do get manicures, and that's completely acceptable, right? And so I just thought it was funny because there's these ideas, even in, on a serious note, we always have an opportunity to help, especially in a role of coaching. And I think boys and men in particular are more at risk of losing their identity and not really understanding who they were created to be and what they should be, because there's this idea that, well, men do and men don't. One of the things I love about coaching football is it's a very quote unquote manly thing, right? But it's not. There's some intricacies in the game, and there's some intricacies in the conversations and the coaching that open up doors and avenues of discussion. Like, hey, let's talk about manhood. Let's talk about manhood. And it's not just for sixth grade boys, right? Like we as men need to have these real conversations and be willing to open ourselves up to ideas that maybe we didn't consider previously, that are way more manly, quote unquote, whatever that even means, than we ever even imagined. Like being an awesome girl dad, right? And painting your nails. I super miss that. And you guys have girls, and I personally miss not getting my nails painted. And I thought that was very manly. So,
Hey,
anyways,
let me just real fast step in real fast. I want to make sure we're not confused here. Manicures are for hands. Pedicures
yeah,
are
yeah,
for feet.
yeah.
Just
That's
just to be
how
clear.
often, because I go every week, it just naturally flows off
But I'll
of
say
my
pedicures are awesome. Like they
yeah,
they
super
feel
great.
fantastic. They're great.
Super great.
All
Yeah.
right,
No,
but just
that
wanted to
I
get that out
appreciate
of the
that.
way. Yeah,
Thank you, Stuart. I
you're
appreciate it.
welcome.
I threw that out there to see if any of you guys knew,
I
and
got
now
it.
we know who gets a weekly pedicure.
I'm I'm
I'm
with
pretty
I'm
sure
with you.
the West Point grad is just judging us all right
Yeah.
Hey, the, the
now.
the last pedicure I got was I was guiding a rock course for a week and a half in out in Arizona, and my two co-guides, both women, just like absolutely phenomenal climbers, guides, and teachers. Were like, hey, we're going to get pedicures and we're getting our feet cleaned up.
Yes.
Kind of like much like you said, they're like, hey, this is self-care.
Heck yeah,
Um,
man.
Blew my mind. It was great. Loved it. I
Well, hey,
picked out
let's
last Friday night was the color of the toenail polish I got. It's like blue spark.
nice.
It was awesome.
Blue Sparkle.
Yeah.
That's good. That's good. Well, hey, let's dig in a little bit. So, Tyler Van Horn, Knight Campbell, you guys are running this organization called Caring Leadership. First, give a little bit of background information about who you are. I'll start with the Naval Academy grad first, and then we can go with the second academy next.
Yeah,
Save
so
this for last. I got it.
That's right.
really glad to be here and having this conversation. I think it's important. I went to the Naval Academy, flew helicopters, met my wife there, who is maybe more manly than me. It's a weird dynamic. She was a Marine for 10 years, and now she's an orthopedic surgeon. And here I am talking about pedicures. But had this vision leaving active duty, leaving flying helicopters, of taking leaders outdoors and pairing academically rigorous, meaningful conversations, action oriented conversations with outdoor adventure, because people are happier, healthier, more creative outdoors. You have all these examples, immediate examples to learn these concepts better. And so it's been an awesome and wild ride of learning how to guide, learning how to run a business. And Tyler joined me. I don't know. He's been a guide for a long time, been a partner for a while now, and he's been an awesome part of our team at Caring Leadership. So I'll turn it over to him.
Yeah, thanks, Knight. Glad to be here, y'all. I'm grew up Seattle, Washington, and went off to the military academy, not really knowing what I was getting myself into. Not a huge military presence in the neighborhood where I grew up, but really kind of fell in love with the challenge and the opportunities that my career presented for me. I started off in the infantry, and eventually moved into special forces and served the majority of my career as a special forces officer, pinging around the world in all the hot spots over the last 20 years, and retired a couple years ago. And really the transition was a struggle for me, trying to figure out outside of my last almost 25 years between the military academy and an army career, is the heck am I supposed to do out here in the real world? Explored some options, and once I really sat down and thought about what am I meant to do, I love being outdoors, and I love teaching. The best year I had in the Army was teaching at the military academy for a year, when I got to go back midway through. So how can I put those two things together? Friend of a friend connected with me with Knight and Caring Leadership Strategies, and I've really been able to explore that. And the thing I really appreciate is hey, we're not giving up academic rigor. We're going to get serious about the discussion. This isn't going to be it's going to feel good because of the context we're in, but this isn't a pat on the back type stuff. This is hard thinking and addressing problems, but doing it in a context that totally changes your perspective and makes the interactions that much more impactful. So stoked to be here and talk about what we're up to.
Yeah, dude, I love that. And for context, Knight had reached out and was like, hey, would love to kind of combine what we do and what you guys do and do this men's outdoor retreat thing. And I was like, Stu and I both were just like, dude, this would be incredible. We obviously we're in Colorado. We love being outside, but you guys are next level, ninja guys to what we do. But on the physical front. And I think there was a recognition that, let's combine some of the things that we do, the educational aspects, because a lot of times while I'm huge for a physical challenge, a lot of times the most difficult things are not the physical challenges. They're the things that, like Tyler, you're talking about the transition, right? From military, we see a lot of guys, a lot of vets as they transition because the identity piece is so, it's a challenge to work through as you leave something like the military. And then when you talk about manhood, right? When you talk about being a dad and a husband, and there's two quotes I want to read real quick as we get into this. I think that are very applicable. So, and at Knight, if I'm not mistaken, you're a big Stoic guy, right? You're Marcus Aurelius. You're a big fan.
I like the Stoics. That doesn't necessarily imply that I'm a good Stoic, but I try.
Yeah, yeah. I wouldn't describe you necessarily as the traditional Stoic in personality, but you do value it, and I appreciate that. And a quote recently that I came across was a Marcus Aurelius quote, and he said, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one." And that really stuck with me because I was like, man, it's about action. It's not, there's so many conversations surrounding these things. There's so many examples out there of what a man should or shouldn't be, a good man should or shouldn't be. And we don't action it. We don't just be one, because a lot of us don't know how to be one. We don't have the context for the conversation to action those things and get them on a calendar. And then I'm reading a book, and we're blessed enough to have this author. It's a Jeremy Pryor book called Family Revision. And something early on in the book really stuck with me. And he's talking about the difference in the Western family and the classical family, and a lot of biblical context of that as well. But not even biblical context. You go to other places in the world outside the West, and a lot of this family structure still exists there. But what he says is, one of his quotes is, "Today a man could have an amazing career, leave his family in ruins, and still be considered a truly great man. As a culture, we've decided that individual achievement is vastly more important. While family can be seen as merely a part of one's individual accomplishment, it is more just a sub point of a man's life and doesn't define him in any special way. What I found fascinating about that is I don't think any of us go into these things being like, man, I want to suck as a dad. And I really want my wife to hate me and I want to lose my family. Like, I've not personally met the dude. I'm sure they're out there, but I've not met the dude that's the desired end state. But I think there's so much surrounding manhood and fatherhood and being a husband in particular that's twisted, and an emphasis on other places of quote unquote manhood, that I think these conversations are critical. And here's a kicker in a book that you read, Knight, that I don't know how you read it so quickly, of Boys and Men. You like burned through it. I bet audiobook is what I bet, but I'm just saying. But the one of the things he says is being a great man and focusing on these man and boy issues is not just good for men. It's actually really good for women. It's not a zero sum game, right? We don't have to, it doesn't have to be one or the other. And so as we start this conversation, I want to highlight those few points because I think this conversation is so critical, and what we're going to do on the retreat is so critical because real men need to be having real conversations about real manhood and what that means to us.
Yeah, I love that. And I think there's this distinction that I found in For the Love of Men by Liz Plank. And I think on both sides, right? If women aren't trying to help men be better men and men aren't helping women be better women, it's not, no one's going to fix it on one side of the gender gap. But she, in the very end of that book, talks about the dichotomy between real men and good men. And I think the four of us here are trying to be good men. And that's what I think most men want to be. But there's a lot of pressure in society to be a real man. And a real man is the person who leaves their family, is very successful, maybe burns through a couple marriages, all of that. A good man is a man who maybe is stoic, is there for his family, has integrity, has purpose in life, and pursues it. And I think often we're pressured to be a real man, whatever that is, and do all of that, and we're not really seeking to be a good man. And I hope that's something that we can figure out on this summit out in the mountains, is what does being a good man look like for me, and what can I commit to do to get further along that path.
Let's dive into a little bit more about, what you guys do at Caring Leadership. You both have this passion for outdoor, you have a passion for leadership. How do you combine that, and what does a summit look like, for someone who's interested in going? What do you guys do? Tyler, take it.
Hey, so like I think you can sum it up in like I heard and I forgot, I did and I understood, right? I think at some point there's like a longer version of that attributed to Confucius, but you can read it in a book, you can hear it in a podcast, but until you're putting things into practice, that's when you're really combining like like the kinetic side of things, like physically doing a thing, mental and emotional engagement as well. And that's where like I think learning comes together when you're putting the lessons learned into practice. So like, what do we mean by this? Let's go out and do it and see how it works when it comes to how do I communicate a vision? How do I go and execute that plan? So things like that are pretty critical components of being a leader, are things that we would practice out there on an event. And like I think another important part of it is just the straight up perspective shift. Is we're out of a conference room and we're out in a totally new place, which like may be uncomfortable for some folks that haven't had the opportunity to sleep under the stars before, or really unplug and interact with nature. That perspective shift, and detaching from the distractions of kind of day-to-day life and the sound of the freeway outside your office window really helps things sink in a little bit more.
Yeah, I'd just add an immediate example. We are really good at leveraging the experience for learning. So I just got back from guiding a team in North Carolina. We did a really hard hike. There were some people that had some like minor injuries that were like a day-long thing, not major. Don't worry too much. But it was hard. There were hard team dynamics there. And we were talking about perspective as an overarching topic that weekend. And so the next day, we asked them to sit down, pair up. They didn't know what they were going to do. And they had to write down, if I were the person I were partnered with, what was I nervous about? What was hard for me? What was I excited about? These kind of perspective questions, and then literally share it with other persons. So you're practicing this cognitive empathy in the moment with a real example that everybody did, and getting some feedback of, yeah, that's kind of spot on, or like, wow, you don't have a lot of empathy. Like, that's not at all what I felt. So it's these ideas. If you commit to being more present as a man, and then on the hike, you're not present, we'll call you out and give you that feedback real time. And you can learn from that experience instead of kind of just mentally or academically talking about it in a classroom.
That's awesome. And you also have the privilege to pay for that, getting called out, and ideally learn from that. I think that's great. There's an investment in that. And just out of curiosity, what does your typical clientele look like? Like what's the breakdown for most of your trips? Is it pretty set? Does it vary? What does that look like?
At first, I was going to say very good. They look like very good, good
They're,
looking.
they're very good. They're all good looking and
Super,
extremely highly qualified.
super diverse. That's something we as a organization struggle with. People think, "Whoa, I can't climb mountains," or Mary or Joe can't climb mountains, which drives me insane because who are you to say that they can't climb mountains? And we've seen human beings are capable of so much. But I'd say our client base ranges from 28 to 65, 50-50 men and women, all kinds of different backgrounds, senior leaders to just entering the workforce leaders. The outdoors is for everyone, and we're good at bringing everyone out, working with people. If it's walking in an arboretum, canoeing, or climbing a glaciated peak, like we match the challenge so that it feels out of your comfort zone, but not in the panic zone, for whatever our clients look like.
And just a heads up, Stu, typically when we say we're going to go camping and we're potentially going to be on the ground without a real plush mattress and things of this nature, Stu, there may be a panic that sets in because that panic for everybody, the threshold is vastly different. So
There's nothing wrong with liking nice things, like
I didn't
having
make any judgment. It wasn't
bathrooms
a it
and
wasn't a
comfy
judgment
beds.
statement. It was a statement of love for my best friend. Like that's what it was. It was a statement to really emphasize how empathetic and caring and compassionate and my
Great.
love for you is.
This is great.
That's all that was.
This is great. Thanks, man. I appreciate it.
I
Hey,
look
so
forward to seeing that demonstrated in action in
in
Colorado.
action.
You'll be
That's right.
digging this cat hole for him, right?
That's right. Hey, so 50-50 men, women, diverse backgrounds, uh, leadership positions, businesses, and then you have this structure going on in your businesses, and then you kind of reached out to us and be like, hey, let's do a kinetic man retreat, men only. Let's talk about being a man. Why the shift, and why do you think that this is an important conversation and event to have?
Yeah, so I'm invested in the conversation, and I think I've been invested in women in leadership for a long time. My wife is amazing. I've got two daughters. I've been thinking about, worrying about what does the world look like for my girls in 20 years for a long time. And I don't give myself any space to think about who should I be as a man. I think it's a scary thought. It's a scary conversation. It's frowned upon. If you say that in the wrong circle, people say, well, you're a part of the patriarchy. Why are you hitting on women, or whatever? It's risky to even say that you want to have that conversation, but I think it's fair. We've had multiple women's leadership events. We have one coming up. We've never done a men's leadership event. And I think we want to take that risk because it's an important conversation. It's half the population are men, and if we're not being good men, what are we doing? And how else are we going to become good men without having the conversation? So I'm excited about it. I'm curious what Tyler has to say too.
He's
Yeah,
like,
well,
man, I disagreed with this from the premise from the start when I knew who these guys were. Just kidding. Go ahead, Tyler.
yeah, like I think like broadly, like there's a lot of overlap between like how do I show up as a good woman or like a female leader and a good male leader. Like there's a lot of overlap there. And you know, like I think there's, you know, some it can be challenging to kind of devolve into stereotypes like we're talking about, like oh, real man do this, and like I don't know, if I were to talk to like 30 different people, I might get 30 different definitions of what a real man actually is. um but I think just I'm interested in creating a space for just having the discussion of like what does it mean to show up, and use the strengths that I might have because of who I am, in a way that really lifts everybody up. Um, and what are those traps? Maybe it would be a good word for it. Or what are those places where I can fall into? Like when I show up at my when I'm not showing up at my best, what does that look like, and how does that impact others? And I think ultimately it comes down to an awareness and an intentionality of how we're showing up. Dave, just like that discussion you had with the football team, it's like, you know, hey, like off the cuff comment about, you know, something that's kind of referring to manliness or, you know, lack of manliness, and like, hey, let's turn that into like, hey, be intentional about taking care of yourselves. I think things like that are awesome, and taking out practical application from, you know, like boiling down a stereotype and then turning into like something that folks can actually practically apply, is really interesting. And I think also too, like I'm approaching this with curiosity, like what comes out of it. Like I lived and worked in a male dominated career field. You know, I mean, women weren't even allowed to serve in combat arms branches until 2015, you know, like towards the tail end of my career. And so I've seen a lot of different examples of men in leadership, some awesome, some like I wasn't as stoked about, but looking forward to having that conversation kind of like on the other side of the fence. Like, what does it look like out in the real world? Um,
Yeah, you know, and it's fascinating. Stu and I had the pleasure of meeting up with some dudes to go see the Dude Dad live, a comedy show, and it was an amazing time. And one of the guys there is a kinetic man, and he listened to an episode we had about you know, with the author of Boys and Men, and he's a dad. He's a girl dad, right? We have a couple girl dads in the Kinetic Man. Both of them have three daughters. Most every dude in the Kinetic Man with kids has a mix. There's one dude with eight boys, which is which he's the outlier. Um, but it's fascinating to me that all these men, and ourselves included, right? Everybody here has daughters, right? At least one daughter, right? And so, you know, the idea, what this guy said with the three daughters after the concert, he said, hey, I listened to that talk, read the book, and what's fascinating to me is the conversations I'm having with my daughters as a dad of three girls. It is exactly surrounding what kind of men, you know, young men and men are available to my daughters as they go out, right? And that's where I think a lot of this conversation loses perspective. I think a lot of us think of men and women, X and Y, you know, it's black and white, and it's not. It's I'm thinking about how many boys on this football team can I influence in a way to teach them what manhood means for them so that they can be better suited dudes to ideally one day my daughter, well, my daughter's not gonna marry, you know, well, I don't know that. We just had a guy on whose wife is 10 years older than him, right? And so the pool of boys out there, that is directly within my area of concern. 100%. And more to the point, if I'm confused in myself of what manhood means for me, how am I then passing that down to my boys, but also how am I passing that to my daughter? What am I modeling for my daughter, who I dearly love? I love her no less than my boys. Actually, I may love her more than my boys. Boys, if you're listening, I love you guys so much. Noah, Jake, you guys are my favorite boys in the world. I love you guys. But in all reality, there's not a drop off of love for my daughter, right? I love my children and I want the best for them, and the best for them looks very different than what I'm seeing. And I take personal responsibility for that, right? And we're all kind of the target audience that we're aiming at is still men who are at a place that they can greatly influence not only in their own household, but their community in a way that drives some of this change. Because nothing's more sad, again, back to that book of Boys and Men, nothing's more sad to me um, than you talked about Tyler, or no, I think it was Unite. You're like, hey, who's to say that you can't climb mountains? Who are you to say that about that person? Well, we're seeing that a lot with, hey, you can't be in a room by yourself with a girl. Like, you can't do that. Well, I'm in the room by myself with my daughter all the time. Like, and it's my passion is to serve these children. You're telling me I can't do that? Like, it's really sad to me that some of these misplaced definitions of manhood and womanhood has a very practical and economic impact, and then ultimately generational impact on how kids see men and women, right? Like, this is serious stuff.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think I love that Tyler said he's coming into this with a curious mindset. I as well don't have the answers. I think it's a beautiful thing that we can do to come out on a mountain and explore this and make more meaning of it. But I wonder how much of it is being a good man, real man, whatever that is, and how much of it is just being a good human. And what tools are we as men being told not to use by society that could make our lives better, that could make us better fathers, husbands, leaders, like emotional intelligence and empathy. Like most of my life, I've been very much, I don't know what my emotions are. I feel weird, so I'm going to hide for a while. And I'm a pretty empathetic person, pretty empathetic man. So there are a lot of men out there who I ask a client, when you're frustrated or angry, where do you feel that in your body? Dead silence, no idea, right? We're missing out on these tools that make us connect to other human beings better. So I don't know how much of it is good man, and how much is it just good human.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I'd add that there's one set of awareness of like, how do I show up as a good person? I think there's another side of that is understanding how who I am, my identity as a man impacts those around me. I don't know how much you guys follow the social media surrounding like the outdoors and outdoor recreation, but there's been like kind of an interesting swirl lately around a survey. I don't even know where it originated, but a survey of like, hey, women who are hiking alone, would you rather come across another man on the trail or a bear on the trail? Overwhelmingly, the women answered, I'd rather come across a bear because I know what the risks are and I know how to avoid it. And coming by myself, coming across another man on the trail there's too many unknowns that are too scary, and I don't like that. And like massive discussion following, and like bottom line, like you can think what you want about that, or a lot of folks were like shaming the women, like, oh, you're so dumb, you don't know like what a bear could do to you. Like, no, stop, listen. The point there is how do the impressions of your identity impact other people, and think twice about what can I do to change that so that people do feel safe around me. If I am in a room alone with someone else, if I act one way that's maybe just like that's naturally just how I act, talking to folks or like how I interact with people, and you aren't mindful about how that may be impacting them in a way that you don't understand because you haven't thought about it. I think having that awareness of how do I impact others based on how I'm showing up, and how does that make people feel around me? As a good man, I want people to feel safe, empowered, maybe like learn a thing or two, maybe teach me a thing or two, right? Like those are the things that I want to impart to people. But if I'm not intentional about how I'm showing up, my identity alone can cause people to feel unsafe. And paying attention to that's important. So yeah, I toss that out there as well. It's not just like how do I show up, but how I show up impact others out there.
I love that, Tyler. And I think it's such a nuanced gray area because a good man is strong, and that strength, that self-sufficiency, whatever it is, can make people feel secure and safe. And a real man is strong and aggressive and could make people feel radically unsafe. And so even the same descriptor of a strong man taken two different ways can make people around us feel really different. I think that's a powerful conversation.
So one of the things that we hound on a lot in the Kinetic Man, and it's a rule inside of our mastermind group. Well, two rules: you have to show up, you have to show up with honesty, and you have to show up with vulnerability. And I think in the context of our conversation around men, I think that's hard to do a lot of times in a group of men, right? But we force it, and it sometimes can be really uncomfortable. And I'm excited about doing that in an in-person environment because we do some men's retreats as well, but in an environment when you're outdoors, and it's going to be probably uncomfortable anyways. And we're going to have hard conversations about being a man, and it's going to require for you to be vulnerable and be honest with yourself and with others. And I think having that in an environment, getting outdoors, doing some hard things, is going to push it even more so. And we walk away with it always with no kidding, an action step, right? Like, what are you going to do about it? What is the action that you're going to put in place after we have this hard conversation, after we get done, crying from a conversation because we just got real vulnerable, right? What does that look like? And I think what you guys are doing combined with what we've been doing is just going to put fuel to the fire. Let's talk about just what that really looks like in September here in Colorado. What do you guys kind of have in store? Where are we going? What are we doing? And what does that look like?
Yeah, what we're good about is having those academically rigorous conversations. So we're going to infuse this conversation with like, what is emotional intelligence? What's the research? What does it look like for leaders? And then we're excited for you all to come in and say, great, we know that. And by the way, that's like a 20-minute quick discussion of what is this? We're not going to be pedantically talking to people or at people, but you give a foundation of this is what this looks like: emotional intelligence, empathy, communication, these different leadership concepts. And then you all come in with your expertise and say, okay, through the lens of being a good man, what ought it look like? What do you want it to look like? Does it look like the same thing for all of us here? Do people have different personalities and it looks different? And then to your point of being action oriented, great. Now that you know what you think it ought to look like to be empathetic as a man in your shoes, what the heck are you going to do about it? And we're going to call you, people around this campfire are going to call you and say, hey, last week you said you were going to ask your wife how she would like you to ask her about feelings or whatever it is. Did you do it? And I think just knowing that people are going to reach out and close that loop causes some forward movement, which is what I think is amazing about what we do.
Yeah, man. And I think a lot of folks, particularly men, we throw words out like vulnerability and action and good man and better husband and dad. I think a lot of that creates overwhelm. Right. I think a lot of us, because we have a picture of what a great man should be, whatever that is, right? And whatever that looks like. And most likely there's probably some corruption of what that really is. And what we talk about, what I'm super excited about, what I love about these conversations, and this is something a neighbor recently, a guy who relatively stoic, non-hugger type, very engineering, kind of a little more, I would say more rigid and emotionally, particularly with other dudes. Man, our relationship has really grown and blossomed because of the conversations we're having, but it's the willingness to go deeper about different topics, right? And what's fascinating to me is that I believe that men and women alike desire a depth of relationship. And what that looks like is getting to know somebody and being known, which requires vulnerability. Women are way better than we are at it, right? They're just better. They're smarter than we are, whatever, however you want to attribute it. They do it better, and it's healthy. I think that's why far less women kill themselves than men, right? That die by suicide, because there's a true power and outlet in relationship. And so I think that, when we go out in the woods and have these conversations, what I love to see is a light bulb moment when it's like, hey, this is as simple as putting your phone down at dinner. Like, this is how simple it is. Or it's as simple as maybe ask 5 questions of your kids before you offer advice. And maybe the fifth question is, hey, would you like to know what I would do with this situation? Right? It's these little tactics that are hugely powerful. For me and my family, I'll tell you, one of the biggest things that has been a game changer for me, my kids, I've learned how to say, hey guys, I'm sorry. As a dad, I'm sorry. I lost my temper. You guys all deserved it because you guys all suck, and I'm gonna, you deserve to get smacked down. But I lost my temper, and I'm sorry, and I want to be a better dad. And that then goes to conversations about things that are way more important to me, like faith. But your Father in heaven is a perfect Father, and I'm not him, right? Like, it just builds on itself, and but not because I say it's right. It's right for me. My manhood looks different than Knight's and then Tyler's and Stu's. And I think that's the important conversation that we're going to get after, which is really, really exciting. And back to your point, Tyler, being open and willing to be curious about these conversations can be an absolute game changer, right? Absolute game changer. No real question in that. It's just more of a comment.
So we have on the books in Rocky Mountain National Park, September 6th through the 8th. We're doing a men's leadership summit with Caring Leadership and Kinetic Man. We're going to go on a pretty legit hike, right? We're going to sit around campfires. Tyler and Knight are going to be leading the way on doing the hike. They're certified guides. What else do we have in store? Like, what are we providing for, we have 12 spots available, right? So we're camping, we're cooking, we're hanging out, we're around a campfire, we're going on a hard hike, we're having serious conversations, hard conversations where we're honest and vulnerable. We're coming away with an action plan. What else do we have in store?
Yeah, we'll have journals for reflection, and we use the experiential learning cycle. So it's not just going out and doing things, it's creating space for reflection. And I don't know about you all, but I am hungry for that. Like, I am always hurrying, always busy, going from meeting to meeting. I see a cool article, I'm like, oh, that's a cool idea, but I have no time to actually sit down, sit with it, make meaning of it, and translate that into something that changes my life and the lives, to your point, David, of the people around me, because maybe I act differently. And so I just am frenetically moving from thing to thing. And that I think, yes, it's an amazing hike. It's on a ridge line. It's going to be incredible views. Campfires are awesome. We're really good at making good food. We're going to provide most of the gear. If you don't have tents, things like that, doesn't matter. We've got your back. But it's that space to step away, think about who you want to be with other men also doing that, and then go back to real life, maybe change a little bit, maybe a little bit better, incrementally becoming more the person that you want to be, and less running from thing to thing frenetically, wishing that you could do better. Just speaking for a friend, I don't have that problem, but yeah.
Yeah, like along the way, in addition to these like kind of the like really important conversations, space for reflection on them, and like accountability and follow up on like, hey, what are you going to do to change? Like, how is this going to change, even just 1%, how you show up when you go home, and accountability and follow up on that. We are going to toss in some things about like just like technical skills about how to keep yourself warm at night, how to minimize the impact that you have on the environment around you, and probably a little bit of natural history about like what caused this place that we are, enjoying to even be here. And some of the geology and environmental studies around that. So like we'll touch on those things because those are just like interesting tidbits to learn about your environment and to kind of help inspire appreciation for for the nature around you. So like those, you'll get like those kind of little like nature nuggets along the way as well, which I think kind of just add to the overall experience. But like Knight said, like really like providing some things to think about, providing space to actually think about them, and then talking about like how is that going to change the way you show up next week.
Just to add in, because people get this misconception, and I think it's interesting in this conversation, we're not going to like start fires with bowstrings or kill squirrels and try to grill them or whatever it is. We're not a survival company. We want you to walk away from this feeling empowered to take your family, friends, whatever, maybe even go backpacking the next time. Most of our people that come out with us have never camped before, have never rock climbed before. And we are passionate about teaching those skills because it makes us better humans to spend that time outdoors. And so then you can go do it with other people. Like that's why we don't do ropes courses and different kind of contrived scenarios, which also work. You just can't apply those to your life outside of that one time, one context. So no flint fires. We'll probably just use gasoline and a lighter safely-ish.
Safely-ish. I love it. I love
Ish.
it. Well, and we're gonna have fun, right? I mean, that's the other thing too, is what I'm super excited about this is deep conversation, it's connection, it's getting to know some people that we've probably never met. Who knows what grows out of that, right? Who knows what if there's businesses or best friends or oh, I have 3 kids, you have 3 kids, oh, I have 2 boys and girl. Oh, wow, oh, you live right down the street. That's crazy. Let's hang out. I mean, there's all kinds of things, and you don't have to tell me how to stay warm in the cold. I'm Big Spoon. If we're in the same tent, I'm Big Spoon. Like it's just physics. It's heat, and it's it's obvious, man. Like we just get it done, right? Stay warm. But I want to go ahead, Tyler.
Sear school style.
Yes, Sear school style.
I was gonna say that's the 6th law of thermodynamics. If anyone was curious, I don't know.
I mean, like I know that I'm walking into this event with 3 folks that are used to like yacht clubs and
exactly
whatever you guys do on boats and all that kind of stuff. So like listen, like you're gonna have to put a backpack on. It's gonna have like a jacket and maybe a water bottle in there, and that's gonna be really heavy for you. But it's gonna be okay.
Gonna put those on top for us, Tyler. Weren't you gonna like for us?
Hey man,
we don't have Sherpas.
We probably shouldn't disagree on the call, right? On the call that we're trying to market this, but like Tyler, we got things to talk about because I may be out. I didn't know that I was gonna have to take off my docksiders and not go to the yacht club. Like all these things that are very natural to me. No, I love it. But I want to encourage our listeners, right? Like I think there's an element of, we've hit on it, being outside and all that stuff is amazing. And if you haven't taken your family out, even if this creates a little bit more confidence to get out there with your family, there's very few things that are more rewarding than taking your kids out into the wilderness if you got kids and just spending time. There's no cell phone reception. There's God's beauty, the silence, and actually the noises of the night, like all the things, all these little things that your kids will pick up on, and it's a beautiful experience, right? And we get to do that on top of. I'm super excited about the leadership opportunity, like the leadership learning lessons that you guys are experts in. Like there's so many things that I'm going to come away from and be like, oh man, I just never thought of that. That we in the Kinetic Man. Those are the words that we're looking for because that usually drives the biggest change. Like I just never thought of that. I just didn't know I could do that thing, right? And so it's going to be fascinating. It's going to be fascinating. It's going to be a great learning experience. It's going to be a lot of fun. I mean, it's Colorado, and we're going to be hiking on a ridge line, dude. Like, I don't think many things get better than unless we do it next time in the winter and you could ski down that. That might be upping at one level. So, no, it's going to be awesome. Super excited about specifically Night that you reached out and you're like, hey, I got this idea. And I think this would be cool. And immediately, man, Stu and I were like, oh, dude, that sounds super dope. Like that is something that we're passionate about. And look, it is a little bit overwhelming, some of these things, but one dude at a time, right? One dude at a time can make a huge difference. And Tyler, to your point, man, the way I show up has a huge influence. In the Connect, man, we talk a lot about don't lose perspective on your influence, not other influence, the influence that you bring into the room. Every time you step into the room, there's something there. And if you're not conscious of it, then you're missing out. And the people around you, more importantly, if you're not conscious of it, and we talk about in the context of like, hey, dude, call a friend or make a friend or talk to somebody, because that person that you're talking to there's a great chance in their mind, they're like, man, I really wish a cool dude like Knight would call me. Like, that'd be super cool. Like, people do think that. We think it, right? We think it. And so when you're the catalyst for action that does those things, man, huge impact. Huge impact. So I'm looking forward to it, boys. It's gonna be fun. And I'm looking forward to Stu like squirming in a backpack and sleeping on the floor on the hard ground. And maybe there's some little buggies that come into the tent. I don't know.
I didn't. That's. I thought we had like.
The bug spray, the bug barriers.
No, I thought we were like staying in cabins and
Yep, we are.
um
Yeah.
air conditioning and stuff like
Yep.
that.
Yeah, we are. Yeah.
Dave
Oh.
is just going to fade you with a palm leaf. I think that's the best we can do.
Definitely know that Dave will be giving out 20-second hugs to all of the attendees.
100% attendees get one. That's part of the package.
Do we get those too?
Multiple. Yes. It's gonna happen. It's gonna happen.
Good.
Well, awesome, boys. Well, this is fun, man. I really appreciate you guys. Not only what you do and your desire to lead. Obviously, Tyler and Knight, both you guys are two of the most thoughtful dudes that I've ever met. In all seriousness, you both, from our first conversation about planning this thing, some of the thoughts and the questions that you guys had were just very. It was, the only way to describe it is just extremely mature and very manly, right? It was like, man, these guys are really serious about imparting not only leadership skills, but how are we better human beings for ourselves and for those that we lead? It's something that really, I came away from that conversation humbled. I was like, man, I need to be a little bit more like that. So I appreciate you guys.
Well, back at you guys. That's why we're here having this conversation and going climbing and camping with you, because I think you all think in the same way that we do, making better men, making better humans, making the world a little bit better, and being action oriented. So we appreciate you. We're excited to get out there climbing and camping and talking about important things.
Yeah, man.
100%. Thanks, guys.
So September 6th through the 8th, 2024, here in Colorado, Rocky Mountain National Park. Details can be found more on the Caring Leadership website. Guys, talk about that. Where do we put what do we put in the show notes? How do guys get signed up?
Yeah, we have right on the website, there are leadership summits, and there's a men's leadership summit that's got all the details, what's included, how to sign up. And if you need a payment plan or something like that, there are options on there for that as well. So go to the website, check it out. I'm sure that you all put that in the show notes, make it easy for people. CairnLeadership.com, CAIRN leadership.com. And we'll see you out there in the mountains.
Yeah, man. Good stuff. That'll be in the show notes. Guys and gals, hey, pass this on. Let's take action on this. Men specifically, come meet us, hang out with us. David does give 20-second hugs. They're awkward, but afterwards, you'll probably really like it.
Not awkward for me. Just throwing it out there. Not awkward for me in the
It's
least.
awkward for me just hearing about it, honestly.
Dude, you've experienced it already.
You've experienced
You've
it.
experienced it already on the slopes. You know what
He
it's all
wants
about.
more. He wants
I have
more.
a lot of ski jacket on. It was a good
Sure.
bear.
That's true. Now nobody's
Awesome.
gonna show up. Just
Great,
kidding.
great. Now we just lost. Anybody who's interested is
Dang
now
it.
no
We'll cut
longer
that part out.
interested.
No one.
Yeah, we'll edit it out. No, he won't.
Tyler, Knight, can't wait to see you guys. Thank you.
Thanks, gents. Have a good
See
one.
you.
See you guys.